We're also following fallout from Musk's cuts to the federal workforce. Today, USAID employees who have been fired or laid off by the Trump administration have been filing in and out of the agency's headquarters, each of them given just 15 minutes to grab their personal belongings and then leave. A crowd of supporters have been outside greeting the ousted workers. Federal government employee Musk addressed the cuts during yesterday's cabinet meeting and admitted that some mistakes were made, but he said they've been fixed.
We will make mistakes. We won't be perfect, but when we make a mistake, we'll fix it very quickly. So, for example, with USAID, one of the things we accidentally canceled very briefly was Ebola, Ebola prevention. I think we all want Ebola prevention. So we restored the Ebola prevention immediately, and there was no interruption.
The former senior USAID official who led the Ebola outbreak response under President Obama, Jeremy Konyndyk, is with us now. So Jeremy is now the president of Refugees International, I should mention. Jeremy, what is the current status of Ebola prevention efforts by the U.S.?
Well, the teams that used to lead that at USAID have been absolutely eviscerated, and I have no idea what Elon Musk is talking about when he says they've been brought back. The vast majority of the staff who worked on Ebola response, who worked on outbreak response, and who worked on deploying disaster responses at USAID have been forced out of their jobs. Many of them are showing up at the building today not to fight Ebola, but to be to be given 15 minutes to rapidly collect their belongings from years of service at USAID and then be forced back out of the building again. So, he's just on a different planet. Okay,
are you saying that when he says this, he's saying it was fixed? Are you saying he's lying?
He is. He's wrong. Whether he knows he's lying or simply just has no idea what he's actually cutting, I couldn't tell you. What I can tell you is that he's incorrect, that the vast majority of the workforce in the Global Health Bureau and the Bureau of Humanitarian Assistance at USAID, which are the teams that deploy after or kind of during a major outbreak emergency to go support WHO and support the responding country, those teams have not been reconstituted.
Okay, so tell us about those teams, how they kind of jump to when there is an outbreak, and how you can't really know when that is.
Yeah, so I led the response in 2014 to the huge Ebola outbreak in West Africa, and we were deploying virologists, disease experts, logisticians, people who could set up Ebola treatment units, epidemiologists to go track down where we were seeing the transmission occurring. All of that expertise is being pushed out of the agency right now. Those people have not been brought back. They've not been restored. And of course, they're dismantling all of the surrounding infrastructure of the agency. So USAID now is not capable of deploying any kind of disaster response team because of the destruction that's ongoing.
Can you, if there is a disaster, reconstitute a team like that?
No, not easily. These are capabilities that have been built up through kind of processes of iteration and experimentation and learning over decades, and they're incredibly capable. But you can't just toggle that capability on and off every couple of years. When you lose those people, when you lose those systems, when you lose the kind of institutional muscle memory that you need in order to get a response team off the ground within hours of a major disaster, you can't just kind of cobble that back together once it's all fallen apart.
Okay, so listen, just really quickly, if you're talking directly to Elon Musk, what do you need him to know so that we are all protected, so that this kind of thing can be contained?
What we need Elon Musk and the President and Secretary Rubio to know is that USAID is a vital part of securing and protecting America. It's a vital part of protecting us against health risks abroad, responding to disasters, and it's a vital part of how America shows up in the world. The people who work there are incredibly hardworking. These are the kind of people who will walk headlong into an Ebola hot zone in service of their country, and they deserve much better than the treatment they're getting right now.
Jeremy Konyndyk, thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.